Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Tonight, we're going to have a live stream talking about a few different topics that I think are all related. First, we're going to dive into the Rick Warren, his bad take on the crucifixion, which is it was really bad. It was universally laughed at, and he got ratioed into oblivion. Even Christian media is covering it. So, a lot to talk about there because it was one of the dumbest things I've read all year.
I
And
think
it is,
even Michael Knowles was like talking about it. So it's not. It's when we
and
talk
Michael
about
Knowles
media
is,
getting into it, like even
and
like
he's very forgiving too. Like he defended the He Gets Us campaign
yeah,
last year. So, and he's definitely defending Nala Ray,
prostitute.
the former prostitute. But yeah, she's oh, that's a digression for another time to talk about the follow up to that story. But we're going to talk about Rick Warren's take on the crucifixion and his fancying of himself as an enlightened centrist, and Jesus is this enlightened centrist in between two thieves. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the PCA and their scandal involving um, the their guidelines that are supportive of illegal immigration. And then we're going to talk about two other denominations that are also getting into the same thing that the PCA was caught doing. And these denominations are the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. We're going to talk about what they're doing. And we're also going to talk about the Evangelical Covenant Church. These two stories have not been published yet on Evangelical Dark Web, so you're going to hear about them on the live stream before they're actually published. So, lots to talk about tonight. Some sort of, I don't want to say it's breaking news because the LCMS stuff has been talked about. No one's talked about the ECC stuff. So we're going to be the first to kind of bring that out into the light. We'll do that tonight. And I'll probably publish that article on Saturday. But you want to support Evangelical Dark Web because it's a Christian news gathering and commentary ministry. But the least you can do is like this video, subscribe to the channel, to the podcast if you are new. So, and the ways to do that linked in the description below. So, with that said, I'm ready to dive into the Rick Warren. And I don't know if you caught the thumbnail for this video, but I thought it was a 10 out of 10 thumbnail on my part uh, with the Tropic Thunder reference. Because I asked my wife last night, should I put Rick Warren goes full retard as a headline? Should I do that? And she said no. I think she said that might be unnecessarily off putting. And I go through my history. I have never actually said that in a headline. I've never actually used the term.
Retard.
I've never used it in a headline. I've made so many allusions to it in headlines, like because I typed in the word full. How many times have I used the word full as a adverb, right? In a headline. Actually, no, it'd be an
Adjective.
adjective. Still be an adjective. I've used that so many times, but I've never done it with here. So I compromised with my wife and made it the thumbnail. And it's also the thumbnail for tonight's live stream. And the headline of the article is Rick Warren fancies Jesus as enlightened centrist between two thieves. So it's a great, and I kind of begin because let's explain who Rick Warren is. It's kind of a great tragedy that Rick Warren discipled an entire generation of pastors. Rick Warren pioneered the seeker sensitive megachurch culture in the United States and taught many pastors and church planters to do likewise using Purpose Driven Church, also Purpose Driven Life. These are two different books. Eventually, the Southern Baptist Convention would disfellowship Warren's Saddleback Church over their ordination of female pastors. And let's kind of talk about Purpose Driven Church. I want to unpack that a little bit because it is very much we're going to reach people at their bottoms in life. And that way, when things naturally get better, because that's kind of how life works, they're going to be loyal to the Saddleback Church and brand. That's kind of how I see it. They reach people at their lowest points in life to give them a hard sell on Christianity, which may or may not be salvific. But even if, no matter what, I think Saddleback is a false church. Doesn't mean there's not good believers in there that need to be rescued from Rick Warren's influence. And sanctification will maybe have a lot of people leave that influence. But nonetheless, He has a very predatory view of evangelism, about we're trying to target people at their lowest points in life. It is kind of the Rick Warren purpose driven church, and a lot of the stuff that he does there. Uh, so I don't know if you have any comments on my description of Rick Warren. I mean,
I
I've only
mean,
scratched the surface of
yeah,
his
there's a lot of surface
political
to
views and
scratch,
stuff,
and there's a
but
lot
just
of
as an
surface to
overall
scratch,
figure,
and there's a lot of figure too. But
there's a lot of figure, there's a
I
lot of
mean, his
surface.
and again, this like the fact that he made this statement in general shouldn't really come as a surprise, given that he's not exactly a robust theologian or, and he has a history of doing similar statements like this. Of like his defense of like female pastors is very bad. I mean, not that there's any such thing as a good articulation of an argument for female pastors, but he'll argue from like the Great Commission, or he'll argue that, you know, I, I guess he'll do the Priscilla and Aquila thing. Like he'll do a lot of the standard like bad arguments
But he will
for,
invent his new ones.
yeah, I mean,
The
but
Great Commission one was a new argument that I'd never heard before. Maybe Mike
I
Winger
mean,
covered it in his 13 hours. I don't know. But you're right. We just scratched the surface. I just wanted to give an overall background to say, hey, this figure is newsworthy. Rick Warren is a big deal in evangelicalism historically. And it's a good way to start off an article. In politics,
and you do,
though,
oh, you're about
uh,
to get to, I'll let you go.
in politics, no one is further from the truth and less reliable than the enlightened centrist. Uh, and I find these people to be pretty insufferable politically. A character who fancies himself above the political fray and is more knowledgeable than either side. And my response to the enlightened centrist is even the rabid liberal understands the zero sum nature of politics and how power is used better than the enlightened centrist, which is why Barack Obama was so devastatingly effective compared to Republican presidents until the second Trump term. Like even Trump 1 was not nearly as effective as a president as Barack Obama, because Obama knew how to use power. And Trump is now showing that he knows how to use power. And you love to see that. But Rick Warren ironically fancies himself as the enlightened centrist. I'm above it, and I know better than either side. The truth is down the middle. If we can just reach a reasonable compromise.
And again, that's, that could describe, Tim Keller, Carl Truman, like all the anyone that's like third way. Even Matt Chandler kind of tried to do that shtick. So I mean, a lot of people will do the third way. I'm the enlightened centrist, and really centrists just get impaled on the fence that they're straddling on, and that's what happens to a to a third wayist or an enlightened centrist. You get impaled.
Pretty much, and emasculated. So here's a tweet from Rick Warren. He says, John 19:18, they crucified Jesus with two others, one on each side and Jesus in the middle. The guys on both sides were thieves. That's the end of the Bible verse. The guys on both sides were thieves. If you're looking for the hashtag real Jesus, he's still using hashtags, by the way. I don't want to say he's a boomer for that, but the algorithm killed hashtags, so you shouldn't use hashtags. Not a caricature disfigured by partisan motivations. You'll find him, meaning Jesus, in the middle, not on either side. And this got lampooned by everyone. And if you look at the numbers, the screenshot has 2.7 million views, and this was taken last night, so it's had a whole data increase. And only 975 likes. That is very pitiful approval rating on that tweet. And a lot of quotes, a lot of replies in the comment section. He got ratioed into oblivion on this. And you love to see that, actually.
And it does go show you how little influence he actually has.
And keep in mind on the
Especially,
views, anything that's a quote of this, anyone quote
yes.
tweeting him, their views count towards his views. That's how the view count works. So he got a lot of views on this, but a lot of people got way more approval for their responses. And for good reason. Let's first break down the Bible verse, because I was actually shocked, because if you followed Rick Warren long enough, you'll notice that Rick Warren has a tendency to quote the Bible but never give a translation. He is actually using the NIV more or less. He's using the New International Version. There's a couple changes. He uses Jesus instead of him, which is what the NIV says in this verse
And
is
that's
him.
they
And he
crucified
uses
him.
the and symbol instead of the word and. But other than that, that's basically the NIV translation. He didn't just he didn't do what was it on Pen? I think it was Acts 2. He rewrote a verse in Acts 2 to make it seem like women were preaching in one of his novel arguments for female pastors. So he actually does stick to what the Bible says on this.
I mean,
I'm not going to fault him for replacing him with Jesus because you're quoting it without the accompanying context, and he's trying to provide more context to it. So that's as much grace as he's going to get because the Bible does in fact say that.
I mean, if you're gonna, change,
And then the commentary is what's all bad.
I mean, if you're gonna change a scriptural translation for arguing your bad liberal theology, I mean, the NIV already kind of does some of that legwork for you.
Yeah, especially the modern NIVs.
On the head coverings, that's the verse I'm thinking of. That's the worst offense I've seen. But
there's also the isn't it the submit to one another is also don't they break that up into the marriage section?
I'd have to check, but
yeah, I thought that they did that, even though the submit to one another is not referring to the verses on marriage that come after it. It's referring to the verses before it. But anyway, he says, if you're looking for the real Jesus, not a caricature disfigured by partisan motivations, you'll find him in the middle, not on either side. So let's talk about the most glaring issue with this, and that's found in the text, is that Jesus does pick a side between the thieves. One of those thieves got to be with Jesus in paradise. So Jesus picks a side between the two thieves on each side of him. I'll just say that because Jesus was not in the middle of the two thieves in that sense, not spiritually at least, because one of the thieves was by his side. So it doesn't fit in the context.
I mean, they're both thieves. They're not even like different, other than the distinction that one of them becomes saved and one of them does not. They're otherwise the exact same person. They're there for the same reason.
Yeah, they're the same character.
There's nothing actually different. This isn't, the Republicans on one side, the Democrats on the other, which are two distinct, not only ideologically, but let's be honest, demographically, they're two distinct people.
Right. And Jesus does side with one of them because one of the thieves repents. And that is what separates the one thief from the other. But let's actually, I do have a lot to say about Rick Warren. So this, again, got ratioed into oblivion. And the idea here is that, does Jesus stand in the middle of the side that wants to transgender children and the side that opposes such abuse? Which side is Jesus on? Is he in the middle of that? We could do so many political issues and ask whether one of them on either, is Jesus in the middle, or, the gay marriage issue? Is he right down the middle and not on either side of the partisan divide? On the life issues, Jesus just simply in the middle and not on either side of the divide? Like, are we going to act like that Jesus believes in rape and incest exceptions? I mean, I'm not going to pretend that like that's the case. So there's so many issues that we could just bring this up for, but I don't want to beat that dead horse because there's a lot to cover tonight. The moderate middle is also a foundation of sand being pulled mostly to the left until the past election cycle. So the idea that Jesus is going to be found in the middle is always a moving target. And again, Obama moved the middle way to the left, and Trump to some degree did not stop that until, I would say, recently. The vibe shift is moving to the right, but Trump did help usher in the movement to the left for the middle. That's just a reality.
I might say he carried it, but at the same time, he didn't have the ability to change the momentum. And again, I mean, not to get too deep in the rabbit hole, but I think a lot of the Republican move to the left would have been inevitable regardless of who was at the head of the party.
Yeah, I think
And
I
then
think that's fair.
and then the trough was hit. And again, I credit the Groyper Wars with being that turnaround point of trolling Charlie Kirk and a lot of those antics that got the party back on track on the gay issue. And then you have like Matt Walsh and company targeting the transgender stuff. So I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's what actually the idea of going after these people is actually what reversed course. So
And
basically,
another
what the
thing
church
to
should have been doing the entire time.
another thing to point out is that the fight against wokeness in the church eventually led to Trump championing the issue. Like Trump retweeted Tom Askell in 2020. So us, you know, the field that we operate in, this niche evangelical field, does have a much larger impact on society as a whole. I'm not trying to like toot my own horn or anything because I don't know what impact, how much of a role I played into that. Other, you know, we played a huge role with the Alistair Begg story, but other than that story, it's not like I can point to a specific example of say us playing a major impact in a major story. We played maybe the Samaritan's Purse stuff, you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, we do get
exposing
a
a
lot
lot
of
of the
credit.
evangelical
We do get a lot of credit, even
yeah,
though we weren't the first to talk about that. We got more on that in the future, but just a
hopefully, yeah.
plug.
But you know, and then there's some false teachers that I've probably been very early to expose. But other than that, like we're just one person. We don't have the largest audience in the world, but people like Tom Askell got retweeted by President Trump, and that's a great thing. That is a great thing. The stuff that happens in Reformed Christianity does have reverberations, and you know, this niche evangelical sector we
with
swim in has a lot of
with
reverberations.
exception to the Antioch Declaration,
Yes, the Antioch
having
Declaration,
no impact at all on
no
Pete Hegseth.
impact. I mean, Pete Hegseth got confirmed. It was never brought up. He had a lot of other issues that were brought up, but not associations with Doug Wilson or internet anons. But you know who does love himself some internet anons? JD Vance. So round of applause to him. But anyway, another thing I want to bring up is that Rick Warren is not a centrist. He's not in the middle of anything. And this is Rick Warren. This is a picture of Rick Warren. It's from Kay Warren's Instagram, I believe. So that's his wife. This is from 2020, I think. And this is them at a Black Lives Matter rally. So they're at a Black Lives Matter, I should say riots, because they were collectively riots, mostly peaceful riots, right? If we want to go back to 2020 and relive that. So let's just talk about Rick Warren's record on politics for a second. This is someone who attacked faithful pastors for remaining open during lockdowns. This is someone who I believe he was in that one video where he's championing. He's with, did he do the video with Ed Stetzer, or I think that was Russell Moore, but he was a full hard on Branch Covidian. He had a medical apartheid at his and then he also in 2020, to just go back to the woke stuff, I believe it was 2020, he had a blacks only struggle session event so that they could I guess share feelings or something.
Do the airing of grievances.
Yes, the airing of grievances. So Rick Warren is not the center. He is a far left pastor. Let's be real about that. I also saw a pretty funny post. I hope I got it in live stream fodder. Because it was basically a picture of him so he's standing with Barack Obama and John McCain next to him, because I believe he
gave the prayer, or he did a town hall
or I thought it was a debate
or something like that, town hall debate, something like that in the 08 election. He also gives the prayer at the inauguration for Barack Obama in 2009. And I know I don't know the specifics because I just haven't listened to the prayer or watched that inauguration since it probably happened. But I know, that prayer can get a lot of criticism from a theological standpoint for being very watered down.
That might be something to I don't know. Maybe it's something to revisit, but so much going on. But yeah, that's kind of. Oh yes, let's also talk about how not only is Rick Warren a feminist, but he's also His church also covertly affirms homosexuality because they were basically attached to the Andy Stanley uh, conference, and they host. I believe their church hosted a group affiliated with the one group. We talked about them last week. It wasn't posture shift. It was the changing the journey or whatever. Embracing the journey. Embracing the journey. That was the name of the organization. So there's a lot of stuff going on with that church. It is egalitarian, also gay affirming, at least more gay affirming than scripture allows you to be, which I think makes that a non-slanderous claim, uh, especially since they were tagging along with the Andy Stanley stuff, and then so liberal that they were kicked out of the Southern Baptist Convention. So, yeah, that is Rick Warren in a nutshell. He is not a enlightened centrist. He is a fat liberal.
Well,
There we go.
I guess just to put some cherry on top of the cake, is my response to this whole Rick Warren thing is that, Rick Warren probably imagines that Jesus on the cross in between the two thieves looks a lot like him.
I mean, as in, is he allowed to do that in his worldview? Because he's like so woke. Doesn't he have to like make sure he doesn't think of Jesus as being white? Maybe
Well,
Rick Warren, but like brown.
tan, yeah. But yeah, I mean, he probably imagines, that, oh, the Jesus in the middle looks exactly like him, thinks exactly like him, and acts exactly like him.
So I think we've covered this story. Are you ready to go on to the PCA?
Let's go.
Okay, so PCA got into some trouble this week. And the PCA, this is a headline that I had because by the time I wrote this article, they had already removed it. They were pretty quick to remove it, like within hours of this story blowing up. And this story blew up. So the PCA removes encouragement of illegal immigration from Mission's website. The Presbyterian Church in America is one of the most important denominations. They are the largest Presbyterian denomination that's not full liberal. Sorry, Redeem Zoomer. Gonna make a little jab there because PCUSA doesn't count. So the very key Presbyterian denomination. It was a denomination of Tim Keller, for instance, and they got a lot of other people, but I think Tim Keller played a massive role in liberalizing the PCA, but that's something to talk about later. Mission to North America provides resources and training curriculum to the PCA. So it is a critical institution in Presbyterianism, and that's the organization we're going to discuss in this part of the video or live stream. The Mission to North America was caught treacherously encouraging illegal aliens to withstand Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. The PCA promoted on a page titled Refugee and Immigration Ministry for Churches, help immigrants facing 2025 policy changes, which was published in early January. The resources were published in anticipation of President Trump's inauguration. Rather than embrace what the overwhelming majority of their congregations voted for, the PCA sought to undermine their congregation by sowing treachery. So just a quick reminder, evangelicals voted at like 82% margin, 82% for Donald Trump, who ran on a mass deportation mandate.
Now, keep in mind the advice that they're giving is essentially saying that people should attempt to deceive federal agents regarding immigration. Like, don't bring any documentation that gives your country of origin or whatever. Which again, that is, I mean, you're essentially saying, yeah, it's okay to hide the truth and omit truth, which again is a violation of the ninth commandment when you're actually applying this into.
So this is the archive of what they were promoting. I mean, a lot of it's boilerplate, just to be clear, but they do have links to like pro illegal amnesty groups or illegal groups. So a lot of organizations that are pro open borders, they link to. So that's something to keep in mind, that they did this, they chose to do this, and it's not an accident. this was not an accident, and that's something that we're going to have to keep in mind. I'm going to skip over the Zach Groff response, but Zach Groff, to his credit, did crack down on this, and he did help give the crackdown on this. But let me just read part of what was said. So on the other hand, many of our neighbors and many of our brothers and sisters in Christ do not have permanent legal status. They may have temporary status, such as humanitarian parole or temporary protected status or deferred action for childhood arrivals. Some may not have documents giving them permission to remain in the United States. Many undocumented persons, so again, very liberal, because contrary to belief, illegal aliens are quite documented. Especially the guy who killed Laken Riley. He was extremely documented. He was not undocumented while in this country.
Yeah, I mean, we know that they have criminal records.
Yeah, exactly. That's documentation. Are married to green card holders or U.S. citizens. Many have U.S. citizen children. Mixed status families. Again, those children should not be U.S. citizens. They should have their citizenship removed and revoked because they're not Americans. I'll just say that. Our neighbors who have no documents and those who have temporary status are facing much uncertainty in the months and years ahead. Example, persons who have applied for asylum in the United States have been given court dates years into the future with uncertainty during the interim. And again, we're caping up for bogus asylum claims. This might actually be worse than the ECC website, actually, now that I reread it. So that is kind of what they were purporting. That's kind of what they did, and then they have a bunch of links. So again, here's the page. We basically just read this section here. So that was it, and then the page has been taken down. I did want to point out what the Westminster Confession of Faith says. I might have, it's chapter 23, I think, but there's also, so let me just pull that up because, so chapter 23 says civil magistrates may not assume for themselves the administration of the word and sacraments or have powers to the keys of the kingdom of heaven or in the least interfere in matters of faith, yet as nursing fathers nursing fathers. So, Stephen Wolfe says something like that. People get very uppity, just saying. It is the duty of the civil magistrates to protect the church and our common Lord without giving preference to any denomination of Christians above the rest, in such manner that all ecclesiastical persons. So, hold on. So, that's the part where it says that they have the power to protect Christians and churches and stuff like that. Then there's the part where it says it is the duty of the people to pray for the magistrates, to honor their persons, and to pay them tribute or other dues, to obey their lawful commands and be subject to their authority for conscience sake. Infidelity or difference in religion doth not make void the magistrate's just and legal authority, nor free the people from their obedience to him from which ecclesiastical persons are not exempt. So basically, pastors are not exempt from the lawful enforcement of law, or from law-abiding rules of the magistrate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll do two things. I mean, nursing fathers implies a common lineage and shared blood, just for the record. That's part of the reason people get uppity at Stephen Wolfe is, the magistrate's a common father. Well, yeah, which also implies shared blood on the shared soil. But second is that, it actually was an issue during the Reformation where the Catholics would assert that, their priesthood and their bishops and so forth were not actually subject to the kings, which again, if you know anything about the Middle Ages, the popes were above the kings. So again, they had an entire theological system that said that the church was essentially not subject to the local rulers. So the Protestants asserted the opposite, that the magistrates were above the religious rulers in matters of civil and criminal, I guess, conduct. So that is a, maybe not a major tenet of the Reformation, but that is a part of the Reformation that was hashed out.
See, and this ties together because the Westminster Confession of Faith affirms and upholds Romans 13. And Rick Warren does not believe in Romans 13. He believes in being an enlightened centrist, which means we got to be in the middle of the two sides. And that's where the truth is. And that's not what Romans 13 says. Romans 13 says the government has a job to be the avenging angel. That is their duty. They are to bear the sword, not in vain. They are to reward good and punish evil. If one side wants to reward evil and punish good, and the other side wants to punish evil and reward good, Jesus is not in the middle of those two sides. But that is what you see with liberals, is they kind of want to create a moral equivalency that doesn't exist to justify their own debauchery, because liberalism is evil and we don't talk about that enough. So I wanted to highlight the role of Angela Pacey. So Angela Pacey is the director of the Refugee and Immigrant Ministry of the Mission to North America. She appears to be the person responsible for this event. Pacey is a longtime member of Kevin DeYoung's Christ Covenant Church in Matthews, North Carolina. Kevin DeYoung has a long history with the Woke Gospel Coalition. And I posted this on the Twitter sphere. Kevin DeYoung does not believe in nations. So this really is not surprising that he is elevating feminist liberals in his so-called church.
I mean, this was the woman that signed the World Relief letter and statement. So she signed it on behalf of
Mission to North
PCA,
America.
Missions of North America. She signs it with her credentials on it. So again, she was signing on behalf of her agency.
Yeah, and that's pretty evil. That's the same as what Brent Leatherwood did. And again, Brent Leatherwood.
Yeah. Did Brent Leatherwood have permission from the trustees of the ERLC to use his title for signing a public statement, or does he just have the ability to do that on his own will? I mean,
so let's follow up and go to part 2. So the PCA repents of violating Romans 13. So they published a statement, and the statement reads: Mission North America serves the PCA for the advancement of Christ's kingdom through our churches in U.S. and Canada. We do this through the two-pronged focus on church planting and church vitality. I'm just going to skip that. One long-standing M&A ministry is our Refugee and Immigrant Ministry, or RIM. So they're trying to establish that this ministry is long-standing. It's been around. Recently, we posted links on our webpage to external organizations offering a wide range of recommendations and frequently asked questions on immigration. M&A's leadership erroneously allowed the posting of content that advised undocumented persons of ways of avoid being detected by authorities. So let's talk about this for a second. If you are not a liberal, why would you use the term undocumented persons if you aren't a liberal? Again, I've already established these people are very well documented.
well, keep in mind, I mean, obviously, let's be honest. Let's assume that Angela Pacey or someone in her vicinity was probably responsible for the content on the page. Then her supervisor or whatever they get wind of this, and then they have to retract it in haste. So you still have liberals that are in this organization, even if they're not as extreme as her, but they're doing damage control. So they're still gonna do damage control in the style that a liberal would do it.
So they are repenting, according to the statement. We're going to get to that part in a second, but they are repenting, but we got to hold them to that, is my point here. This language here does not give confidence that the repentance is authentic when they're using the term undocumented persons. So they continue. We affirm that it is our Christian duty to obey lawful commands of the civil magistrate and be subject to their authority. And they cite Bible verses in the Westminster Confession of Faith. To counsel otherwise is sin. Yes, I would
Yes,
agree with that.
violation of Ninth Commandment. Like there's no Nazis under the floor or Jews under the floorboards exception to the Ninth Commandment.
Well, there's no exception when talking about illegal aliens. I don't want to use the term. I don't like the term illegal immigrant anymore because they're not immigrants. They should be viewed as invaders.
But so, I mean, the
alien
point is
at least
there is no officious lie. There's no it's all sin because God's very nature is truth.
So then they say, we confess that we fell short of the biblical and confessional standards. We repent and apologize. We also apologize for causing confusion and consternation in our church. We have removed all the previously posted information from our website. So this part is true. They have done that.
Well, I mean,
because we looked at the archive.
Repent might be a little too soon to call, but
we got to hold them.
Thus far, they've apologized.
But we will hold them to the repent part. MNA's Refugee and Immigration Ministry, along with other MNA ministries, seeks to serve our churches with resources that enable them to faithfully follow the Lord's call to love the stranger. However, MNA does not engage in providing legal advice, political campaigning, or partisan positions. The information we post going forward will provide ecclesiastical resources in line with our confession for guidance on the matter. That is a red flag also. I didn't catch this when writing the article, but that line there is a red flag to me because what they are saying is that they're going to revisit the same issue and just make sure it's in line with the confession. I guess that's my alarm's going off because I don't trust these liberals to do that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, again, they are probably still liberals that just got caught. So, again, this is why they do need to be held to the fire.
And then they conclude by saying the M&A's permanent committee is holding its spring meeting during the first week of March, and this issue is docketed for further focused discussion as part of the committee's regular oversight of the MNA's ministries. The committee does this work on behalf of the General Assembly of the PCA, which meets annually in June. So, fun fact, we'll be covering that. I don't think we'll be live streaming it. So, it is good to see that they are repenting of this treachery and citing Romans 13 in their own faith confession. The statement is only the second step in addressing the issue. The first step is like deleting the stuff. The second step is this statement here. But the next steps, let's talk about the next steps. The PCA must remove the people who did this, starting with Angela Pacey, director of the Refugee and Immigrant Ministry of Mission to North America. Pacey's, and I explain again who Pacey is. And then, like you said, Pacey used her credentials in the PCA to sign on to World Relief's statement denouncing the stoppage of money to their open borders profiteering. And that's a term we need to use more, as open borders profiteering. So that's the story with the PCA. I don't know if you had anything else to add on that.
I mean, and let's just, say that the PCA is probably the best denomination in America. I mean, if we had to actually pick one, I would say that they're stronger than the Southern Baptist Convention.
Best in terms of large denomination.
Yeah, size and,
direction and magnitude.
Yes. They are probably the best denomination. I would feel very comfortable with that take. They are 60-40 conservative. So they are still majority good, but obviously, yes, there is some bad apples in the bunch. And obviously New Mexico or Rio Grande Presbytery is garbage. And 5%, at least 5.25% of their churches have.
Well, that's PCA deacons in general have.
Yes.
But there were some notable female deacon churches in that presbytery that's going after Zachary Garris.
Yes. So yes, they have problems, but they are probably the best in class as far as denominations go.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if the Creek weren't being pulled to the left in woke directions by a certain mega church or a certain pastor in Idaho. But the PCA is standing its ground on a lot of issues. They did go after, were they the denomination that went after Sarah Young and Jesus Calling and stuff like that? It was either them or the OPC. I'm pretty sure it was the PCA that did that.
That did
But
like a study, or I'm sure that studied it.
yeah, and that they want to tackle what their denomination gave as far as influence to the world. So I want to talk about the next denomination, which is the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. And this is the most well known Lutheran Church denomination in evangelicalism. There are other ones that seem probably a lot more conservative. Like the Wells, I would imagine, is more conservative than the LCMS because the LCMS is way more liberal than they think they are. But the LCMS is the denomination where the Ryan Turnipseed stuff happened. And shout out to Ryan Turnipseed for raising awareness about this issue that we're about to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, generally when I hear what's wrong with the LCMS, it's generally from Turnipseed. Obviously, their president, Matthew Harrison, I think that's his name. He's
Yeah.
a liberal. Just
Yeah, and
through and
he's in
through.
denial about how liberal he is. And he says that there's abominable things in his heart, despite being a Christian. If that's the case, he shouldn't be a pastor. Uh, because he was comparing himself to homosexuals and pedophiles. So, uh, we've just talked about that. So in contrast to the PCA and what since we just talked about them, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod published a series of resources responding to the same issue, couched in a generalized excuse. And I what I mean by that is that they're basically calling these guidelines. So let's go to the page for a second. This is the page. So the LCMS shares law enforcement visit guidelines. Why in February of 2025 are we publishing guidelines for law enforcement visits? Can you think of a reason why you would do that?
No. I mean,
Can you think of a reason why 3 denominations are posting guidelines in the last 2 months?
I mean, it just goes to show you that that's like the liberal angle freaking out over the Trump administration, because the left still doesn't really have a narrative on how to go after Trump, though it seems like they're going to stick on this. We're going to defend the government bloat and like defend all the programs getting axed by Doge, because
Well, I think their
even
angle is to make it seem like Trump is serving Elon Musk.
well, yeah,
So they're going to try and paint Trump or Elon Musk as a Rasputin-like figure,
but I
which
mean,
honestly makes Trump look more sympathetic. I don't think that's a good idea in the long run, but it's bad politics because first of all, Elon Musk is a super normie, so he speaks normie, and then second of all, it only works if his advice is absolutely. Other than the H-1B issue, which we've talked about here, it hasn't been super terrible on all fronts.
I
But I
mean,
digress.
but the idea is they're trying to use this. The church is going to have an ICE raid in the near future because of Trump rolling back one protocol, which again does. I mean, that also allows the ICE to go after like homeless shelters that are like owned by churches. So I mean, there are a lot of practical reasons why they would do a raid on a church, because homeless shelter for one example.
But let me just bring up as a fact check here. That hasn't happened.
No,
The Christianity Today lied about an event that happened right outside of a so-called church. I think they were meeting in a strip mall or something. But either way, it happened outside of that church or like an actual mall. So they didn't actually raid inside the church during a service, but Christianity or Compromise Today made it seem like they did. And then they also their personalities also said that he wasn't an illegal immigrant, even though he was, and he had been deported once before. But he didn't do nothing, or whatever the meme
didn't
is.
do nothing.
So they published 2 guidelines. One is for schools, and the other is for congregations. And we can just read them. They're boilerplate, but again, why are they publishing them? Unless it's to assert their loyalty, their affinity for illegal immigration. It is called a virtue signal.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
this is the importance of framing, importance of counter signaling. It's like, why do you post information that you post? Why do you do what you do? And it's in response to, in this case, actions that would be implementing a mass deportation agenda, and
so
that's what they're going
basically,
against.
they have like a bunch of statements saying if law enforcement agent comes onto the property, the pastor or his deg-
Designate.
designee, I don't know, I'm struggling here tonight, must immediately be notified, and the agent should be escorted to a room or that is in a private area. And then they talk about trying to get the badge number and stuff like that of the agent. And then the agent needs to talk to the attorney of the church, and the bishop. Do they use the word bishop? District, I think maybe the word they use. So like you want the guy to talk to your attorney and stuff like that. So it's like you're gonna have this guy sit in a room and wait for you to play phone tag. It's just so obstructionist. And then if he presents a warrant, the warrant must be examined to make sure there's a judicial, it was signed by a judge and a magistrate, and then make sure that the address is correct and blah, blah, blah. It's like very obstructionist. But then we get to step 8, which is really where it exposes itself. It says in all matters, including matters of immigration. So why are you including immigration there?
It's almost like if you had a document that was like a standard document, it's like this was like the change to the document, and then you send it out.
And it says both minors and adults have the right to remain silent and to not answer the law enforcement agents' questions. They also have the right to counsel, but not at the government's expense. So actually, with what state is that true in? Because public public defenders are at a government's expense. In Maryland, you just have to pay a $50 application fee. But other than that, all the legal expenses is on the state. What does it mean it's not at the government expense? So that must also be a nuance to immigration.
I think they're just trying to say, oh, it's no, they have the right to counsel, but it's not at the. I don't know.
But
That's
no, that if you read, the Miranda rights, if you do not have an attorney, one will be provided for you.
yeah. I mean,
What
I think
what
it's
this is really about is that immigration courts don't provide you an attorney. So they include all this stuff, but at the end of the day, this whole document and the one regarding schools is the same. It just has school instead of pastor, head of the school, and stuff like that. So you just switch out all the church language for school language, and it's the exact same document, including number 8, which is basically it reveals the purpose of this document is that this is about illegal immigration and nothing else. That is why this is here. There's not a threat of law enforcement attacking churches. You know when there was a threat for this? In 2020. That's when there was a threat of this. Why wasn't this out 5 years ago? Almost 5 years ago, to be exact. Why didn't we have this then? Because they're liberals. And I can get into more of the history of the ECLA. I mean, aside from Matthew Harrison, their president being not super, I mean, he's a mushy moderate at best. And he attacked Ryan Turnipseed and stuff like that. And 30% of the LCMS is openly Marxist, at least, if you want to go by their presidential election, because Matthew Harrison represented the more conservative bloc. There's a way more liberal bloc that lost and came in second place in the LCMS. So that denomination is so cooked, as the kids say, they don't realize how bad they are.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is one of those denominations where the average like churchgoer is basically a Fox News viewer in terms of their age. They have no youth, according to the numbers. So again, they need to actually get their act together if they actually want to have a next generation. And a lot of the like as boomers are trending liberal because they're like the only demographic where Trump is actually like 50-50 on because otherwise his approval ratings are like through the roof,
I know it's
at
like
all time highs.
Gen X and young voters are loving the second Trump
And
administration.
boomers are like 50-50. So boomers
Yeah.
will be the liberal generation. And a lot of their denominations will die with them. And does the LCMS want to die with the boomer generation?
And that is what many are asking. So let's go to a gayer denomination, and that is the Evangelical Covenant Church. And like we said for the PCA, they are encouraging illegal immigration. This is again a violation of Romans 13. And now we're going to talk about the ECC. So let me explain what the ECC is. If you want to go into their history, I don't write this in the article. They are a Swedish denomination. And as a Swedish denomination, they were kind of like there's like a free church movement in Sweden. So you basically have uh, autonomous churches from the state. They believe in state not being part of the state compared to, say, Lutheranism in Sweden. And they split off with the EFCA, which is the Evangelical Free Church of or in America, which is also a denomination that's been struggling to fight liberalism, by the way. But the ECC is of that tradition. They split over the issue of female pastors, by the way, and other liberalism. And the ECC is the liberal split. They're the liberal group in that. So the ECC, the Evangelical Covenant Church, is an outlier among liberal denominations. And I find this to be a very fascinating case study. On one hand, their doctrines and practices deny the authority of Scripture because, again, they believe in female pastors. On the other hand, it is one of the most seeker-sensitive megachurch denominations in the country. Imagine if Calvary Chapel was fake and gay. You would have the ECC. So instead of Chuck Smith, it's Craig Groeschel, pastor of America's largest megachurch. So that's a good description of the ECC. I also wrote an article on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, involving a preach-off that this megachurch in Colorado was doing, and that was an ECC church.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, Craig Groeschel is also associated with the U-Vision
U-Vision Bible app, yeah.
Bible app. So again, the largest, most popular Bible app is, influenced by this denomination. So it might not be large because I don't think they're a large denomination, but they are very impactful.
They have a lot of large mega churches.
Yes.
So this is the outlier of liberal denominations because most liberal denominations are headed downhill. They're going to go the way of the dinosaur and be extinct. But the ECC has some longevity in it because they have this mega church bankroll giving them an aura of legitimacy, or I don't want to say an aura, but they have an illusion of lasting longer than these other liberal denominations. So I want to give a breakdown because you can't rehash this enough. They are a woke denomination. In 2008, I've been saying 2009 for a long time. It's actually 2008, 1 year off. The Evangelical Covenant Church adopted a resolution titled Racial Righteousness, and the resolution adopted critical race theory as a worldview. Perhaps the most egregious line in the resolution is its lament on evangelicals truncating the gospel. And it says, quote, "For a season of our history, we succumbed to a larger evangelical trend that truncated the gospel, limiting the good news to a personal salvation at the expense of reaching out to our neighbor, allowing us to largely exempt ourselves from the struggle for racial justice and equality." This was back when equality was the liberal buzzword instead of equity. So they did a flip, and most conservatives went along with that. Keep that in mind. So this is heretical as it attacks the evangelical church for not adding social works to the gospel. This, in essence, it is saying that the gospel is insufficient. In addition to affirming and being an early adopter to critical race theory, they were one of the first major denominations to embrace theology, which affirms homosexual desires and identities as non-sinful. Like they promote side B theology, and it's just all over their website. Uh, this is a female-led denomination because their president is female, and that they support illegal immigration is an unsurprising development. So let's dive into their treason now. So this is the web page. It's on the ECC website, which has a lot of resources on it. So it says understanding new ICE policies on church access. So this is legal rights and preparedness for congregation. Also comes with a Spanish version, which is going beyond what the other denominations did. They kept it all in English. So it says the Evangelical Covenant Church is composed the following in response to new legislative policy that affects congregations in the United States. While churches have historically been deemed off limits to immigration authorities due to their sensitive status designations within communities, congregations now face the prospect of federal agents entering houses of worship to arrest migrants within their congregations. This policy change has created anxiety, fear, and questions for many. The intent of this document is to explain what the new policy means for congregations and how they can legally respond if an immigration and customs enforcement ICE agent shows up at their church. This document will explain the legal rights of a church, a person within a church, and an ICE agent. Additionally, this document will provide community safety, human rights, and detention tracking protocols that may be helpful for communities as they respond to recent executive orders and immigration legislation that has been enacted. Our prayer is that this correspondence will help address existing confusion and equip our churches to feel resourced and supported in faithfully caring for their communities. So we have a lot of boilerplate stuff about basically a lot of the same obstructionist language that was in the LCMS document is in this section about, badge numbers and stuff like that, making sure that their warrant is valid and stuff like that. They counsel illegal immigration. They counsel illegal aliens to withhold their immigration status and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on here. I don't think it's as bad as the PCA stuff, but this is still, they are still embracing illegal immigration here.
I mean, the PCA might be worse given that who the offender is, because no one's really surprised that the ECC does something. And also because, the PCA is being subversive, they might actually go over and above, which is why it might be perceived as worse in how it's written. Versus the ECC, they're already liberal, so they don't need to be giddy about, subverting scripture, or in this case, because they're not even subverting their own doctrinal tradition or lack thereof.
Yeah. So that's the Evangelical Covenant Church. Again, they're trying to make an issue because I don't think the Trump administration is going to do raids on churches. I don't think ICE is going to do that. Wouldn't it just be easier to wait in the parking lot until after it's done?
I mean, again, I think the rule also, again, it was like churches, schools, and like homeless shelters,
and schools should be raided. I have no problem with raiding schools.
Yeah, I mean, like if you found out there's like a sex offender on the school, would you not want a warrant to be served during school hours? And schools already do drug tests and have like safety officers. Like that's a huge program that that happens in Maryland.
Yeah, and they can already bring the dogs to search the locker or sniff the lockers.
It's not like they don't have schools don't actually do like law enforcement business during school hours already. It's just not necessarily immigration related, but I mean, again, we've had like adults, like fully grown adults in high schools with underage students. Again, I mean, I think there's a case in Louisiana where it's like a 27-year-old girl or woman was in a high school it's something insane like that.
Oh, is this like one of those like she was arrested for statutory offending?
I don't think she was. No. They
I
just
remember there was a case like that where
no.
this girl pretended to be
This
a
might be a different
high
one,
schooler.
but but I think they were claiming, I think they went out of their way to say the one I'm thinking of that, there was no sex involved, which,
Yeah.
the point is, you do have these people in the schools and they will lie about their age and gain access to schools, regardless of whether their intent is to go after the kids or not.
Yeah, I mean, also schools are government buildings, or assuming that these are public schools, there's no reason why a law enforcement agency should be barred from going to a public school. I understand the argument against a private school, but at the same time, I'd say it's still on limits. I'm fine with that. So, anything else to cover? Because that was kind of what I wanted to cover tonight. It all ties into Rick Warren, who does not understand Romans 13, that the government must wield a sword not in vain, and defending its borders is one of the functions of government. You can't just let people invade your territory and uh, still have a country. It's not how that works. And I don't blame Julius Caesar for getting the legions together when a bunch of people wanted to immigrate into Roman territory, because that's what he did. So, I'll do a last call for questions, but anything you got coming up?
Yeah, we got some stuff talking about Lifeway and just, a lot of mission drift there. I mean, again, if you think there's anything, if you think like NAM gets a lot of criticism because, they're the ones that are doing a lot of the immigration stuff would be through Send Relief. Obviously, they got a lot of the scandals with the paychecks and all that and how much these people are getting paid. But even Lifeway is bad. And that's what I got an article just breaking down on
What?
some of their latest shenanigans with how
Oh,
they're feminist at the top of Lifeway, and obviously it filters down through the product. But it's good to go over this. There's some recent content that is worth covering, and that's what I got in the pipeline.
all right. And I'll let you know you can support Evangelical Dark Web at evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. There's a link in the description below. Shouldn't really, I want to get out of the habit of reading URLs and videos. Also, check out Winning Not Winsome, 10 Commandments of Spiritual Warfare, linked below, Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I think I sell books there too. Ebook is a pretty good place to go as well. It is my first, and do also support. It is a based book, but it's mostly about discernment and doing a lot of what I'm doing. It's kind of like my manifesto on discernment. So it is definitely different than other books that are written in the evangelical space. So I don't see any questions, but I'll just end it there. Have a blessed day. Stay based. Crisis